Fantastic, Warden. The next delegation is virtually today from Miss Maggie Braun, the founder of an organization called KICLEI, and that stands for Kicking International Council out of Local Environmental Initiatives. And so virtually we have Maggie, so the floor is yours, Maggie. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Maggie Braun. I'm really excited to be here with you today. KICLEI Canada is an initiative that is working to educate communities and municipal councils on the voluntary nature of climate action plans. And we find that these climate action plans are based on an organization called ICLEI's five-milestone framework. And it seems that in Renfrew County, you're moving through the same 5 milestones of completing a baseline emissions inventory, setting reduction targets, developing a plan, adopting that plan, and then monitoring and tracking the plan. So today I'm going to be covering, I'm speaking on behalf of KICLEI, but also on behalf of 300 residents from Renfrew County who have signed a petition that is opposing the development of a climate action plan that is based on that 5 milestone model. Additionally, we've done a survey in the area. It's just been released, so we've had a bit of feedback. But what we're finding is that the residents so far are not looking for the council to heavily prioritize net zero by 2050 commitments over other municipal priorities. And as I get through the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the municipal priorities and the inserting of global sustainable development goals into your local environmental stewardship priorities as a municipal council. So in today's presentation, I'm going to touch on council responsibilities in Ontario municipalities, the legal context, so looking at the international, federal, and provincial requirements and what they say about the municipalities and what you're required to do in relation to net zero by 2050, the financial implications of climate action plans, which is something that doesn't get discussed enough, and I appreciate that this council has raised questions about the cost of these programs. We'll look at Renfrew County as a natural carbon sink and what the emissions are coming out of Renfrew County and the carbon sequestration capacity, showing that you already absorb more CO2 than you currently emit. And then we'll look at some practical alternatives to net zero programs that you can do locally that are not reliant on this amount of data collection and adoption of new technologies, and then redirecting resources to local priorities which is as mentioned earlier, housing and homelessness are a real issue in communities all across Canada, and there are several local priorities under municipal jurisdiction that really need our attention, our funds, our resources, and we want to make sure that those are prioritized over net zero plans and commitments. So looking at the council's responsibilities, as you all know, Section 224 of the Ontario Municipal Act, it outlines that council members are entrusted to represent the public and consider the well-being and interests of the municipality. You're entrusted to develop and evaluate policies and programs like you're doing today and maintain accountability and transparency. So it's very important to note that decision-making on whether to adopt these plans and programs rests on the council. Consultants and staff can offer advice, but the final decision belongs to you. This duty is further reinforced by the declaration of office, where each council member pledged to act in the best interest of the municipality and its residents. What we're finding is that municipalities that are signing up for climate action plans are spending in the millions on externally driven plans and programs. And over time, this is not reflecting the will of the public or the financial responsibility expected of local municipal councils. So we're going across the country and in Renfrew County today to urge the council to reevaluate the climate action plan and ensure that it serves your local needs. So from the legal context, international, federal, and provincial requirements. It's very important to clarify that the Paris Agreement is an international agreement that was signed up for at the federal level. It is not legal. There is no legal requirements for municipalities to act on anything regarding the Paris Agreement. So we do see in the supporting rationale and the adoption of climate action plans that municipalities are bringing forward their responsibility to fulfill the Paris Agreement. And I feel like that is a misunderstanding of what the Paris Agreement is, and that it is a federally binding agreement and requires no action from municipalities in order, it's not legally enforceable at the municipal level. And that goes for any federal legislation related to net zero. And in Ontario, there is no legislation at the provincial level enforcing climate action plan adoption at the municipal level. So there's no legal requirements for the adoption of climate action plans. So I just wanted to make that point clear. Additionally, in Ontario, we have the Ontario Energy Consumption and Demand Report. So another reason why municipalities are adopting climate action plans is a misunderstanding that the climate action plan is going to help them to complete their provincial requirements to do the energy consumption and demand report. But that Ontario Energy Report focuses only on energy use in municipal buildings and requires a minimal cost and effort. It's in the report that I submitted, I did a comparison of the two, and you can look at that report there. But the energy report is every 5 years, whereas the monitoring and tracking of climate action plans is annually or biannually. And the climate action plan requires a very broad data collection across the entire municipality and the entire community. And it also leads to a state of constant reporting and expensive projects that extend far beyond your municipal responsibilities. So municipal participation in climate action plans is completely voluntary. Choosing not to participate carries no legal penalties, and adopting the climate action plans means that the municipality, because you're doing it voluntarily, the municipality therefore bears all financial and legal risks with no guarantee of environmental success or financial long-term benefits. So the financial implications, this is something that I find the consultants and administrators of climate action plan programs don't really touch on. They're not providing the long-term cost of the programs. So we've done a breakdown on that. And very recently in Tiny Township, they agreed to do a cost analysis of the program, which is great. It's the first time in Canadian history after 30 years of these plans being adopted that a municipality is actually looking at what it costs to do specifically the climate action plans. So what we found is the Ainsworth consultant is doing the same 5 milestones, which is modeled after the ICLEI program, and there's significant cost to the climate action plans. The baseline emissions inventory and ongoing monitoring can cost between $10,000 and at least $50,000 annually. Setting reduction targets and developing the climate action plans is between $25,000 and $125,000 for a municipality like Renfrew. And the implementation costs are between $13 million to $192 million. And those are conservative estimates because those costs are including upgrading the municipal fleets to EV vehicles, upgrading the municipal buildings, installing smart technology for ongoing data collection, EV charging stations, the introduction of circular economies, which is an entire new economic model being introduced through these programs quite nonchalantly, I would say, and redesigning communities to fit models like the 15-minute city and really aiming for high density housing in the urban areas while impacting the land designations for rural property owners, which make it harder for them to utilize their land in a way that they were traditionally using their land when they purchased it. So we want to make it easier for people to live on the land and to own homes and to purchase property and to use that property to build homes and run their businesses and so on, not add added restrictions, which we find over the last 30 years have kind of led to the drive of population growth away from rural and smaller townships and towns like you have in rural Renfrew into the urban areas where there's the high density housing. So, as I said, no municipality in Canada has ever calculated the full costs of these programs and plans. And as our analysis shows, that implementing this plan in Renfrew County could be financially overwhelming. And for a rural county with low emissions and abundant natural carbon sinks, this level of spending would be seen as impractical and unsustainable in the long term. So let's look at Renfrew County as a natural carbon sink.
I'm sorry.
I've been doing.
I don't know if I'm sorry. I don't know if you can see it, but you've got 5 minutes left. I don't want to interrupt your flow. Thank you.
That's perfect. I think I'll be right on time. I appreciate that. Renfrew County. I've been looking at each province. It's easier for me to do provincial reports and just see where each province sits when I'm looking at the carbon sequestration. So in Ontario, our population is sitting about 14.5 million people. And when we do the calculation there, we find that in Ontario, our population is emitting 205.9 million tons of CO2 annually. So that seems like a lot. But when we factor in Ontario's forests and wetlands and farmlands, we find that we are absorbing over 3 times that amount of CO2. And I've actually just updated that calculation to include other carbon sinks. There's quite a number of carbon sinks that we can look at, so that our ability to absorb 3 times that amount of CO2, that number actually can go up even further when we look at all our carbon sinks. And in Renfrew County, you are a rural county, so you're playing a major role in the province's ability to absorb CO2. And I would propose that climate action plans that recognize that natural carbon sink capacity and that look at local initiatives that could protect and conserve your natural carbon sinks as well as enhance them would be more cost effective and beneficial than adopting these external programs that are coming with hidden costs and are relying quite heavily on the adopting new technology as the solution. And here in Canada, we are a developed nation. We have expertise and leadership in our communities. And I believe that we can come up with local solutions to address whatever environmental problems that we have. We do love the environment here in Canada, and local environmental stewardship programs should be more focused on local solutions. So the practical alternatives. One pilot project that you can consider, and I can come back and work with your Planning and Economic Development Committee, but it would be to investigate into regenerative agriculture and ways that you could boost your soil carbon content naturally. I believe that within a short period of time, you could run a pilot project and show your community and the province and Canada as a whole that we could absorb our CO2 emissions while restoring our soil naturally. And this would have several benefits. It would support farmers. It would help with drought issues, and it's an entire presentation all on its own. But that is one alternative that you could look at, as well as, of course, smaller projects that are conserving the forests and wetlands and ecological assets that you already have in the county. So that is one alternative that you could look at. And one of the main things I would like you to get from this presentation is the importance of making sure that your resources and your administrative strengths that you have at the municipal level are directed to your immediate local priorities. So
I can give you another 30 seconds if that's okay. Thank you.
So housing, thank you, housing, energy security, economic development, public safety and community programs, and so on. So with that, we would respectfully ask the council to pause and reconsider the path it's planning to move forward with. And we are in a time in Canada where Canadians need leadership, and I believe that leadership is going to come from local councils across the country. We are really counting on you to protect the land and public funds from any outside interests. And as much as we love the environment, we really need to make sure that our communities aren't being taken advantage of. And I think that there's a lot of industries that stand to benefit from the adoption of these climate action plans. And we need to question who is getting the municipal funds from these programs, and is that the best use of the municipal funds for the community and the residents as a whole. So with that, I'm happy to take I thank you for your time and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying fairly close to our guidelines. I know it's our first time through it, so we're very tentative, but thank you very much for your politeness and your accommodation. With that, questions, comments, concerns from members of council, and member from Hamilton Brownlee, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and thank you through you to Ms. Braun for being here this morning. I wanted to a couple of things. I do have a question, but I wanted to make a comment. So the needs of our community, the Municipal Act confers on this council and all councils, frankly, in Ontario. The powers of a municipality under this or any other act shall be interpreted broadly so as to confer broad authority on the municipality to enable the municipality to govern its affairs. So certainly, in your presentation, you made reference to we are not legally bound to do certain things, and that is absolutely true. We're not legally bound to operate 2 long-term care homes. We're bound to operate 1, but we do operate 2. We've made the decision that that's in the best interests of our community. We're not required to fund the MESA program or the VTAC program, but we decided that there's a real need in our community. Health, as I'm sure everyone is aware, through our Constitution, is a provincial responsibility. Now, in this instance, the province has been providing 100% of the dollars, but we've created these programs without any legal responsibility to have done these, but we did them because there is incredible moral responsibility to take action. So whatever this room ultimately decides to do, we believe that we have the best interests in our community. As everyone in the room is aware, politics is to try and meet as many competing interests for limited or scarce resources. So ultimately, this council in 2017 passed a motion directing that a long-term plan for climate change be developed. It took quite some time before we were able to engage in that, and we're just at step 1. So we're going to continue to move forward on that. I just wanted to make that clear that this is not outside of the authority of this municipality, this particular council. This council has the authority to decide what we believe is in the best interests of our community. And I have no doubt that we have been doing precisely that the entire length of time that I've been sitting in the room. The question that I had, Mr. Chair, Mr. Warden, was that if I understood correctly, I think Ms. Braun, you had suggested that Ontario is emitting approximately 205 million or megatons, I think. Was it million tons or megatons of CO2 equivalent? And that, within the county of Renfrew, the contiguous county of Renfrew, geographical, political county of Renfrew, that we have 3 times the carbon sink of our emissions. Did I understand that correctly?
So I submitted a report. That report said 3 times, and that is for Ontario. So Ontario emits 205.9 million tons. That's based off of our population and the per capita emissions of 14.2 tons of CO2 per year per person. That's what they base it off of. And I've updated that and added the managed forest and other carbon sinks. And the calculation is now that Ontario absorbs 893.2 million tons is sequestered. So we're a net negative of 687.3 million tons annually. And we've not yet calculated in the urban green spaces, grasslands, riparian zones, and aquatic vegetation. So that number will go up as we get the data on the other sinks, but that is for Ontario, not Renfrew specifically. But if we can get all the data on the number of hectares of forests and other zones for Renfrew, we could do that calculation for you specifically. But this is for Ontario as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
For Ontario municipalities to consider. And I just think, when we're looking at considering what's in the best interest for the municipality, this is why these presentations are important, because we want to start providing some more information so that you can make decisions based off of a more broader set of information that's being provided. So we do want to just emphasize that you're not legally bound to do the climate action plans. This is completely voluntary. Your council has decided that it is in the best interest to look into developing a climate action plan, which is following after many other municipalities across Canada who have developed climate action plans over the last 30 years. But what we're finding now is that at the municipal level, there is a nationwide crises in several priorities that are under your jurisdiction that could use a lot more attention and funding. And once you adopt the climate action plan, those reduction targets start to drive your strategic plans and your official plans. And we see official plans now that are fully based off of net zero as the main scope of the official plan, the long-term plan for a community. And what we're saying is that for one thing, that is not a main municipal responsibility. Environmental stewardship certainly is, and there's a lot of local environmental stewardship programs that are now being underfunded because of all the money that will eventually go into the adoption of climate action plans and everything that comes with them.
Thank you. And I think, the councillor made a great point in that we're not exactly racing forward with this. We started in 2017. And again, we're very proud of our stewardship of our managed forests, both privately and the public lands that we hold. So, I think you'll find agreement with us on the stewardship of those. So are there any, the member from Greater Madawaska, please.
Thank you. Just a comment. I'd like to thank you for bringing this forward to give us something to think about. And I'm sure everybody will take a look at it and it'll be part of our judgment. So thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? I'm sorry. Member from McNabb Braeside and then from Armpire.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Braun, for this very informative presentation. As my colleague from Edmonton Bromley mentioned, we did get a report from Ainsworth, but it's very early in the process, and your information here is very well researched and referenced, and I'm sure it'll be very useful to the committee to find a climate action plan. We do want a climate action plan, but the local nature that you brought out will be very interesting, I'm sure, to the committee when it's eventually formed. Thank you.
Thank you. And the member from Armpire, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that, first, thanks, Ms. Braun, for the presentation. To confirm that you're going to provide us with the County of Renfrew carbon emitting that we're doing and what we're saving, if that makes sense. You've done Ontario. Can we do County of Renfrew specific? Thank you.
Ms. Braun?
I would be happy to work on a Renfrew County specific report, and if there is somebody on your staff that has some data on the number of hectares for each ecosystem zone, that would be greatly beneficial. Then I can base it on the numbers that you have there.
Certainly, you may not see this, but Mr. Davis nodded, and so if you could, if you could interact with him, I think he can provide you some of that information from DRAPE and from our GIS. And with that, is there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation, and we have all read, and this morning I noticed a bunch of electronic yellow signs on the various screens. People have paid attention and made notes, so thank you for your time and effort. And before the crowd leaves, I'd like to acknowledge MP Ms. Gallant, Cheryl, your 20 years of service. Informally, congratulations, and thank you very much for representing our community. And we will do something a little more formal later on in the year once we sort some things out. But again, just quickly to acknowledge you and your efforts on our behalf. And it was fitting that you were here with CNL today, because you worked very hard, especially, I remember during the GoCo early days, educating people and trying to refine what that was and flesh it out. And you worked very closely with myself as warden and our community to have an impact. So thank you. And now we will move to, we're going to move to correspondence. Sorry, I lost my agenda. Correspondence, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Warden. Item number 10 on today's agenda, 10A.